Beth Walsh, the horticulturist at Castle Hill in Ipswich. We are part of the Trustees, which is Massachusetts' largest conservation and preservation organization with 118 properties throughout the Commonwealth. Today I'm going to talk to you a little bit about how the formal garden spaces work within the Trustees' mission of conservation. I'd love to hear your thoughts or comments, and please let me know if there's anything that you'd like to hear next. So, a little bit about the history of Castle Hill. Castle Hill was constructed between 1910 and 1925 as the summer home for the Crane family, who hailed from Chicago. They enlisted a number of prominent landscape architects and architects to design the property. And over time, the gardens have changed and evolved. For a long period, they were just lawn and not really maintained as garden spaces. Starting in 2010, the trustees undertook a massive landscape restoration effort, which really shows today at Castle Hill. So we have a number of formal garden spaces, and the one I'm going to talk to you about today is the Italian garden. It was originally designed by the Olmsted Brothers firm between 1910 and 1912. It was improved upon for decades by Robert Cameron, who was the horticulturist here at Castle Hill under the Cranes. And then it was let go and restored by the trustees in 2016. So the garden is now on its fifth season, we'll say, and that is really enough time for a formal perennial garden to become a really mature space. And when you think of these formal landscape spaces, a lot of times what doesn't come to mind is conservation or environmental practices. And what I'd like to let you know today is that that is a sort of outdated idea. So to me, there's three main principles that we're enlisting in the garden at all times that really do blend this idea of conservation and preservation with these historic spaces. The first is the extension of bloom time to support native pollinators. The Cranes used the property as their summer home, so the real focus of horticulture initially was to have 6 to 8 weeks of really fabulous plantings. Today at Castle Hill, we have a year-round season. We have visitors through the winter, spring, summer, and fall with private events, weddings, and general visitation. So that condensed period of bloom doesn't work for us. In reality, that makes things much better for our native pollinators and species. We have things blooming here from the very early spring all the way through our first frost. And that extends the season, makes our area much more versatile, and encourages pollinators and visitors as well. The second thing to consider is the use of native plants. Native plants were not a consideration historically in these gardens. In fact, what was considered exciting were exotic varieties and new varieties. What we've come to realize today is that our native plants offer a lot of the same ornamental attributes, but they're much better suited to our climate, so they require less environmental input. They also support our pollinators, and so those things fit together really well. The third thing is the use of waterwise plants. We have come to realize over time, I think everywhere in the world, hopefully, that water is a really precious and limited resource, and gardens can use an awful lot of it. So when we think about what kind of plants we're going to use, we're thinking about plants that can give the same effect as that historic look, but use a lot less water and therefore a lot less fertilizer, and often therefore require less maintenance. And these three pieces, the extended bloom time, the selection of native species, and the consideration of plants that use less water and less environmental impact, help us to interpret these historic spaces as they once looked, while really fitting with the mission of the trustees as a conservation organization. I thank you for joining me today and thinking about these thoughts here at Castle Hill as well as in your own gardens. And I hope you enjoyed learning more about what we're doing here at Castle Hill. You can find more online content at thetrustees.org/@home. And the Trustees is a great organization that relies on the support of people like you. So if you can, please help us support our mission. Thanks, and happy Earth Week.